Welcome, everybody, to the October 2023 meeting of the Metropolitan Washington Old Time Radio Club. I see a lot of familiar names, and it's lovely to see you all in this format. It's been a while because we met in person at Mank. So do we have, now John William, welcome to the membership.
Thank you.
Lovely to have you part of our merry band. So
Thank you.
I'm glad you were able to make it. That's just terrific. We still have a few people connecting, but do we have any other people for whom this is their first radio club meeting, or you popped in here by mistake? We'd like to greet you and say hello and welcome, and delighted you're here. So that's terrific. I also, before we go much further, would like to thank Bob Cockrum for 2 years of editing Radio Recall, and really did quite a wonderful, wonderful job of it. He turned it into a very professional kind of publication, and it's most impressive. And he's been a joy to work with. So, and I suspect many others of you have the same feelings about that. So thank you, Bob Cockrum, for your considerable service to the club. I can also report that the video that Fred Burney shot at Mank is still in the process of being made ready to upload to our YouTube page. And so keep your fingers crossed, guys, that will happen. I'd love to see it happen in the next couple of weeks. But we also have John Abbott, who is recovering from back surgery, and he is the person who uploads these things. So be patient if you don't find this stuff right away. John will get it done, just not immediately. So now we're at that happy time when we get things started with the first 15. And Frank, you were presenting a first 15 based on the adventures of the Sea Hound, correct? You're filling
correct.
he's also filling in for John Abbott, who was supposed to be doing the first 15 this month. But these things are evergreen, so they will keep, and we'll get John's presentation at a later date. So Frank, would you let me give you power so you can do your first 15?
Oops. Very good.
Make co-host. Okay, great. All right, you have the keys to the kingdom, Frank. Take it away.
Okay, let me share the screen.
Foot's there. I can't.
The lid.
I did.
Okay, can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm back.
Excellent. All right. Well, put this down. Yeah, tonight's first 15 is about the adventures of the Sea Hound. And it began in June of 1942 on the NBC Blue Network. For the first 2.5 years, it was a 5-day-a-week, 15-minute serial. It moved to the Mutual Broadcasting System for 1946 and 1947. When it moved again in 1948, it was to ABC. It was then expanded to a 30-minute broadcast, which alternated with Sky King. The Adventures of the Sea Hound was last broadcast on August 7th of 1951. During the war years of 1942 to 1944, the program was produced with Nelson Rockefeller's Office of the Coordinator of Inter-American Affairs. It was part of a national program to strengthen inter-American relations. In those years, the show featured Captain Silver and his sidekick Jerry hunting Nazi spies throughout the hemisphere. Every episode took place in a different Latin American country. To educate young listeners about each country's geography and strategic importance, Captain Silver's Sea Chart was created. It was a map that identified the vital products, flags, and national heroes of each Latin American republic. Some 200,000 complimentary copies of Captain Silver's Sea Chart were distributed. And in the audio, you'll be hearing, you'll hear how the announcer suggests that you can get your copy of this chart. Now, Captain Silver was the commander or captain of the Sea Hound. And on radio, he was first played by Keen Danyo. He had a very limited radio career, being more successful in the movies. Actually, it seems he is more remembered for a contest he won in 1936. The contest was sponsored by the Hormel Company. Hormel was looking for a name for its new meat product and offering a $100 prize for the winning name. Danyo won with a submission of Spam, but there was some question as to the legitimacy of his win because his brother was the vice president of Hormel. The role of Jerry was played by Bob Hastings, a young Bob Hastings, and he's better remembered for his role on radio as Archie Andrews on the Adventures of Archie Andrews. The character Kai was played by Alan DeVitt. DeVitt was often heard on episodes of The Schadow. Janice Gilbert was heard as Carol Anderson on The Adventures of the Sea Hound, but most of her radio credits are for her participation in the soap opera Hilltop House. Walter Vaughn was heard as Tex. Tex had multiple appearances on Gangbusters, but other than that, again, he had a movie career that was greater than his radio career. Doug Browning was the show's announcer, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to find a photo of Mr. Browning. Comic book of the Sea Hound and a Sea Hound serial starring Buster Crabbe reflected the popularity of the show. So tonight we're going to listen to an episode from September 11th of 1942, which falls within that period of when it was dealing with Latin America, and Captain Silver and Jerry were down there taking care of things. So here is The Adventures of the Sea Hound, September 11th, 1942.
Adventures of the Sea Hound. Sea Hound, ahoy! The Blue Network presents The Adventures of the Sea Hound with Captain Silver and Jerry. Bogart's factory in Ecuador was engaged in the manufacture of novelties from tortoiseshell. The Ecuadorian government was suspicious of him, but felt that he would hang himself if given enough rope. Captain Silver learned what went on behind the scenes in the Bogart factory, but walked into a trap. We left him in a rapidly flooding basement with Bogart's secretary.
Get on my shoulders at once, Jean, or it'll be too late.
But you'll drown.
Hurry. I can stay underwater.
But how can you?
All right, I'll explain. I have a telescoping tube in my pocket. It's come in handy many times. I'll hold one end of the tube in my mouth, and the other end will project above the water. That way, I'll be able to breathe.
Oh.
And if you stand on my shoulders, you can hang onto the ring of the trap door in the ceiling until help comes.
Help? What help?
You remember Fletcher?
Oh, yes, your dog.
He'll bring help.
But, oh, Captain Silver, a dog can't
He's
be
our
in-
only hope, anyway. Now, climb up. Here. Now, let me help you. Easy. Take it up easy now.
I'm getting there.
All right. Up. Can you find the ring?
Yes, I have it.
Good. Water's almost up to my chin now. Won't be able to talk much longer.
If you have to come up to breathe, I can swim a little and stay afloat.
No, I have reasons for wanting them to think that you're the only survivor. Now listen, and remember what I tell you.
Fletcher ran ahead of Kukai, tugging on the leash to show where Captain Silver had gone. At the door of the Bogart factory, the Chinese scholar paused.
Inside is Captain Silver.
Let's get in, Jiminy Cricket.
Quiet, Fletcher. Quiet.
Let's go in, Kukai. If Captain Silver sent Fletcher for us, he needs help.
This is your Bogart factory.
Sure. He's the man that chartered that yawl, the Mariner.
Yes, I know. Jerry, you go to nearest phone, call Senor Lopez, and state present condition of things.
But Captain Silver may need help right away.
If Captain is unable to meet situation alone, addition of only two of us would be of little avail.
But golly,
Call
Kukai.
Senor and state the situation.
Oh, well, all right, then I'll go.
I enter with Fletcher and try to postpone tragedy until arrival of aid.
Okay, Kukai.
Now, lead away, Fletcher.
Running through the factory, trying to keep up with Fletcher, Kukai noticed that the place was idle. No workmen were to be seen. Moreover, the place looked as if it had been hurriedly abandoned. The dog Fletcher leaped against the door at the rear, barking and showing Kukai that Captain Silver was on the other side.
1 minute, Fletcher. I try door.
Just a moment, I'll unlock the door. Hold that dog.
A dog is on leash of leather, as well as leash of obedience. Please open quickly. Quiet, Fletcher.
Keep that beast in check.
Yes, you quiet now, Fletcher, quiet.
What do you want? Where's the fellow that owns that dog?
Owner of dog is Captain Silver. He is here.
He was here, but he's gone. He left soon after that dog ran off.
We see. Fletcher, find the captain. Go now.
Hey, pull that dog back. He's going to claw that door to pieces.
Who is on other side of door?
There's no one there. That's just a storeroom.
Fletcher says captain back there.
I told you the captain left soon after that dog ran off. Who are you?
Your name is Kukai. Association is with Captain Silver.
Well, I think the captain went someplace with a friend. There's no one around here now. You can see that the factory's closed down.
The closing was made in great hurry.
What do you mean?
The great interest of dog arouses curiosity as to other side of door. You don't mind opening, if you please?
Look here, Kukai, or whatever your name is. This is a laboratory, and there are certain things in there that Mr. Bogart wants kept secret.
I keep a secret always. Now I try to open door.
All right, if you've got to see, I'll open it. There, take a look. Nothing there but cases of materials. And the captain certainly isn't small enough to hide in one of those cases.
Now a dog shows interest in floor.
Look here, I've been more than patient with you.
Patience is a great virtue. You must be a great man. Now a display of more greatness will be appreciated. Will you disclose what lies beneath floor?
Nothing at all.
Action of dog disproves the statement.
I don't care what the action of the dog disproves. You've seen all there is to see. Now, will you get out of here so I can lock up?
It would be with great reluctance. Perhaps you have not learned all of Mr. Bogart's secrets.
That's what you think.
You say there is nothing beneath floor. You tell truth?
Of course.
In that case, you and I may improve store of knowledge together. I now open what appears to be a trapdoor in the floor, and we see what is beneath.
Get away from there.
Gun in hand is mark of desperation. Innocent man would not take chance with gun that might backfire with tragedy.
I'll take my chances. If you're so anxious to see what's under
One
that
moment,
floor...
Fletcher does not like guns. Please do not risk injury by more of threat.
Get out of here. Go on, hurry.
It is with great reluctance that I give essential command. Take him, Fletcher.
Quick! Get that dog off of me! Get him off! Get down! Get down!
That is enough. Down, Fletcher, down. On guard.
That dog. Don't let him attack me again.
Down here. Hurry. Open the trap door.
Now we see.
Hurry. Thank goodness. Captain Silver told me you'd be here.
Girl.
Help me out of here. Please.
Yes, I help you. You take my hand, I help you.
All right.
This way now.
I'll try to pull myself up.
Watch. Come up slowly. What? There. Who are you?
Oh, you must be Kukai.
That is the name?
I was holding on to a ring in the trap door. I had to let go so you could open it. I didn't dare call to you until I'd heard that Smith had been overpowered.
Where's the Captain Silver?
Wait. Tell me one thing. Where's Bogart? Where are all the others?
Only this man is here. Nobody else in factory.
Are you sure?
Quite sure. But only evidence is what I saw on her trip to the room. Where is the Captain Silver?
Wait. I'll get him.
While Kukai watched in amazement, Jean jumped back into the water and disappeared in the dark depths. In a moment, she reappeared with Captain Silver at her side.
The Captain.
Ahoy, Kukai. Give Jean a hand out of here. Bogart is gone, eh?
I see no one but man whom Fletcher got. Here, miss, I give you help. Here, I give you... Come, look. Here.
Thank you.
No, Captain, I give a hand to you.
No, I'm out all right, Kukai.
Yes, sir.
I can make... There we are. Well, Smith, looks like you were left behind by the others.
You... How did you manage...
Kukai, there's a lot of evidence down under that water. I have some of the evidence in my pockets.
Yes, Captain.
Bogart used this factory as a cover for his work. He was distributor for Nazi propaganda and seditious material. He brought it in here concealed in turtle shells.
Oh.
From here, he probably sent it out all over the country. Though I don't think he's yet had a chance to get very far.
You stayed beneath water.
Yes. I thought Bogart and the others might still be here. If they thought I had drowned, they might have been trapped into telling a lot of lies that would trip them up when I produced this printed matter.
Yes, you see, it's only my word against Mr. Bogart's. Even with Captain Silver's testimony, it may be hard to prove a case against him.
That is quite true.
We know beyond a doubt that Smith there and Bogart, and at least some of the men who work here, are involved in this Nazi propaganda ring. The problem now is to prove what we know.
I deny everything. I told you I didn't know anything was under that floor.
The manner in which you brought out gun to prevent search is evidence of lie.
Oh, yes? You just prove in court that I threatened you with a gun. It's your word against mine, and your word is not enough.
Oh, Captain Silver, is that true?
I'm afraid it is, Jean.
Then you mean Bogart, Smith, and all the others will go unpunished?
Not if we can help it. Kukai, where's Jerry?
In obedience to suggestion, he went to make a phone call to Senor Lopez.
What for?
To tell the senor of manner in which Fletcher came for us. To give address of this place as end of trail.
All right. We'll go out to the office and wait there. Jean, you might be able to find a few things that would help build a case against Bogart.
I'll see what there is, but I don't think he'd leave anything lying around the office.
Come on, get going, Smith. We'll take you along.
You can't prove anything.
We'll see.
If you hold me a prisoner, I'll bring charges against you. I know my rights.
You can discuss your rights with the police when they get here.
By now, there should be evidence of police.
Jerry may have been unable to get Senor Lopez.
In which case, Jerry should have been here.
How far did he go to make the phone call?
A short distance, only from here to other corner of the street.
All right, go on, Smith, right in the office.
All right, I'm going.
I'm not going to tie you, Smith, because I think Fletcher will make you regret any attempt to get away. Now, here we are.
I'll look through Mr. Bogart's desk, Captain Silver.
Please do. And I'll call Senor Lopez and see if Jerry is reported. I want to find...
What is the matter?
Kukai, look. Bogart has been here. He's left a note.
To whom is the note addressed?
To me. Bogart has captured Jerry.
Once again, Captain Silver has broken up a Nazi ring. Once again, he is responsible for ridding Latin America of the Nazi menace and helping to unite all of the Americas in the gigantic task of defeating the Axis. But what about Jerry? Captain Silver's sea charts are rolling off the press now, and it's only a matter of a few days before thousands of these colorful maps will be in the mail. beautifully printed and ready to be tacked up on your wall. And what a decoration it'll make in your room. Captain Silver's own sea chart showing the United States, Central and South America, including the mountain ranges, rivers, and principal cities. The map is marked with symbols of all the raw materials furnished by the Latin American countries that Uncle Sam needs to stamp out the Axis. It's a large map, printed in 4 colors, and contains all the flags of the Americas. And on it you can follow the day-to-day adventures of Captain Silver in Latin America. If you haven't sent for your copy of the chart, better do so today. It's free. Simply address a penny postcard and mail it to Captain Silver, care of the Blue Network, Station G, Box 33, New York City. I'll repeat that address. Captain Silver, care of the Blue Network, Station G, Box 33, New York City. Will Captain Silver be able to rescue Jerry from his captors? Be sure to tune in Monday at the same time for The Adventures of the Sea Hound. Until Monday, then, Captain Silver says, smooth sailing. The Adventures of the Sea Hound is directed by Cyril Armbruster and comes to you from New York.
Okay, well, that's The Adventures of the Sea Hound. For the number of years that it was broadcast, there aren't many copies of it that are available to listen to online. And the one that you just heard is actually one of the better ones. Those from the late 40s that are available actually aren't as good quality as the one you just heard. So, but obviously, it was an important afternoon serial for the kids and tried to teach them the value of the Latin American countries to the war effort. And from what you just heard, I think it did a pretty good job.
It's an excellent audio, Frank, and as a musician, I really enjoyed the Hammond organ.
Yeah, I knew you would. I knew you would, Wayne. And actually, that's another reason that I chose that one, particularly because it contained the organ music, whereas the ones from the late 40s didn't have that. It just had canned music. And this was, to me, it was more like what old-time radio should be.
Yeah.
You want to go get...
Guys, I love that because we never think about Latin America and World War II in history. That was amazing. But I want to, can I show you my Hammond organ as long as I'm here?
Absolutely.
Sure. Wow.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm getting back to playing now. I'm singing more, but now I'm getting back to playing. So maybe next time we'll have some radio music. Who knows?
Wonderful.
Very good.
Wonderful.
Yes, thank you, Frank. That was really delightful. I'm a sucker for the juvenile radio shows. So I was really sort of like, oh, yeah, I got to check out more of these. Yeah, the audio was excellent, Frank.
Yeah,
Really
it was. It was nice and clear. And considering when it was made and how it was made at that time, is well preserved.
Great stuff. So does anyone have any other questions or observations before we move on to the quiz? Mwahaha.
Yeah, the dialogue was priceless.
Yes.
Are any of the scripts available?
I don't know. I don't know. That may be a question that we can put to Karl later. He would have a good idea as to whether some of these things, such as that, would be available.
That's really great stuff.
Wendy, I can't remember there were two. NBC had two networks, the blue and the red. Which one eventually split off to become ABC? Do you remember, Frank?
It's the blue.
It is the blue. Okay.
The blue. Yeah.
I had been wondering that myself, so thank you for asking the question, Bert.
Sure.
All right, well now, I think if we don't have any more questions, it's time to move to the quiz. So I will now give more keys to the kingdom to our own quiz mistress, Sally Stevens. Just have to, here we are. And we will make you a co-host. So Sally, you now have the power to launch the quiz, which, yes, it was put together this month by Frank Morgan, and excellently well done. Thank you again, Frank.
Things look a little bit different on Zoom. So I am just locating our poll. Hold, please. Did anyone else's update before they could log in today?
Or did you have trouble logging in?
It made me update.
Oh, well, yes, you have to keep care. You have to keep the app up to date. And Zoom has done about 2 or 3 updates just this, like it within the last 30 days. So, yeah.
Well, now I'm trying to find where the poll is.
In the list where you find chat, there's just above chat, it says polls.
Boy, I'm not feeling too bright today.
It's okay. Teachers can be a little slow too.
It's been a day. It's been a day. Let's see, chat. Nope.
See above it?
Ah, there, if I make the screen bigger, it comes on the side. There it is.
And if it had teeth, it'd bit you.
That would have probably been easier. Then I could have found it faster. That certainly would have made it easier. But that was your delay time. So, class, I hope you were able to get your materials in that time. Oh, I'm so glad Joni used that time wisely. And so did Wendy. Oh, excellent. Very good. Brian used that time to get his materials. Yeah. Kelly, very prepared with her spiral notebook. Excellent. Bert, thank you very much. I see your notebook there. And the rest of you, sharpen those number 2 pencils. Get that scratch paper out. It is time for October's Not So Scary quiz, which I am going to launch on the poll. You may fill out on the computer. You may fill out on your paper and pencil. We are all inclusive in how you may answer your questions. The questions will come out and after the main portion of our program. Launching now. Can you see the poll?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Excellent. October's Not So Scary quiz. Don't hold your breath. Number 1. This OTR performer also hosted a radio game show, Are You a Genius? Who was he? A. Mel Blanc. B. Phil Harris. C. Al Jolson. D. Eddie Cantor. This OTR performer also hosted a radio game show, Are You a Genius? Who was he? Number 2. Dimension X was the precursor of which of the following shows? A. X minus 1. B. Brave Tomorrow. C. Journey into Space. D. Space Patrol. Dimension X was the precursor of which of the following shows? Number 3. The Adventures of Frank Merriwell chronicled the college years of a young man in the early 20th century. What university did he attend? A. Harvard. B. Yale. C. Princeton. D. Dartmouth. The Adventures of Frank Merriwell chronicled the college years of a young man in the early 20th century. Which university did he attend? Number 4. Casey was the crime photographer for what newspaper? A. The Illustrated Press. B. The Morning Express. C. The Daily Prophet. D. The National Enquirer. Casey was the crime photographer for which newspaper? Number 5. In his alter ego of Britt Reed, the Green Hornet often met with the police commissioner at the restaurant in this location. A. The Downtown Club. B. The Uptown Club. C. The Playboy Club. D. The Civic Club. In his alter ego of Britt Reed, the Green Hornet often met with the police commissioner at the restaurant in this location. Number 6. Everyone knows Lamont Cranston's gal pal was Margot Lane. Several actresses played the part on radio. Which of the following did not? A. Agnes Moorehead. B. Leslie Woods. C. Francis Robinson. D. Grace Matthews. Everyone knows Lamont Cranston's gal pal was Margot Lane. Several actresses played the part on radio. Which of the following did not? Number 7. This writer, who created the character which led to the radio program The Fat Man, was a veteran of both World Wars and is buried in the Arlington Cemetery. Who is he? A. Ernest Hemingway. B. Samuel D. Hammett. C. Raymond Chandler. D. Mickey Spillane. This writer, who created the character which led to the radio program The Fat Man, was a veteran of both World Wars and is buried in the Arlington Cemetery. Who is he? Number 8. Several shows included Hollywood in their title. Only one featured interviews by gossip columnist Luella Parsons. Which one? A. Hollywood on the Air. B. Hollywood Star Time. C. Hollywood Hotel. D. Hollywood Star Playhouse. Several shows included Hollywood in their title. Only one featured interviews by gossip columnist Luella Parsons. Which one? Number 9. This comedian made his first radio appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show. Who was he? A. Fred Allen. B. Edgar Bergen. C. Jack Benny. D. Red Skelton. This comedian made his first radio appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show. Who was he? Number 10. Hollywood marriages didn't always last that long. The following radio couples enjoyed long marriages. But whose lasted the longest? A. George Burns and Gracie Allen. B. Phil Harris and Alice Faye. C. Jack Benny and Mary Livingston. D. Fred Allen and Portland Hoffa. Hollywood marriages didn't always last that long. The following radio couples enjoyed long marriages, but whose lasted the longest? All right, you will have, while we are enjoying the main program, to answer on the poll, and then we will go over the answers and close the poll when the main program is completed. So you can continue to do that. Otherwise, stay tuned.
Thank you very much, intrepid quiz mistress, and her computer sidekick. Thank you very much. So a lot of good questions there, Frank. Thank you. So now we get to the main program, which is Karl's Schadow. And the topic is Weird Tales on the Air. Now, because I believe Karl is traveling or something, he doesn't have access to his own computer. So Frank is going to run the slideshow while Karl does the narration. And I have it on great authority that they have coordinated on this and they know what they're doing. Surprise. So anyway, thank you very much, Karl, for volunteering to do this. Thank you, Frank, for backstopping him. And without further ado, I will send the action over to Karl, since he's got the audio portion of the program. Frank, do you have any idea what Karl's telephone number is that he's calling in on?
804 area code.
804. Okay, we'll make sure that that is not. Okay. In order to unmute on the telephone, I believe you dial *6 to unmute. Karl.
Looks like it's ready. And
okay, great.
Now
take it away, Karl.
I have to share the screen though, Wendy.
Right. Why?
Right, and can you make Frank co-host so just in case we run into issues, we can effectively communicate?
He's already co-host.
He's already co-host. Okay, great.
Yeah,
thanks.
because he did the first 15. So
okay, great.
Good. Except we still have the graphic from Sea Hound on the screen.
Getting a new one up there.
Ah, very good, very good. There, here we are. Wonderful.
Okay.
We've got a full screen of Weird Tales on the air.
On the air.
Yes. So.
Okay. Okay.
First slide is up.
All right. Well, great. Thanks. Yeah, I've got him here on my computer, Frank. Thank you. And thank you, Wendy. Yes, my title is Weird Tales on the Air, and it's going to be about the pulp magazine Weird Tales and its many adaptations to radio. I want to continue to go on to the next slide and just list a couple or several of the pulp magazines and their respective radio programs as kind of a brief introduction. On the left there, I have anthologies, and I've listed 3 magazines. Scotland Yard, which was published by Dell in the early 1930s, it was a detective pulp. It had crime stories and detective stories from all over the world that were sent in. And in 1931, Dell Publishing, as a publicity stunt, published, offered scripts to various stations as a syndicated series to promote their publication, Scotland Yard. In the following year, Love Story Magazine, which was published by Street and Smith, had the Love Story Magazine Hour on CBS, which was a live program from 1931 to 1932, featuring great stories of romance, and that lasted for about a year. And I want to make a mention that the Schadow, even though he did appear on the program, was not the host. We don't know who the host was, but definitely the Schadow was not the host. Adventure Magazine was probably one of the premier pulp magazines ever published. It was first offered in 1910 and continued actually into the 1970s as a paperback. And then it had a radio series from 1931 featuring stories from the sea to desert, from all time periods. It was really one of the best pulp magazines, and it had its share of radio adaptations as well. Then on the right, I've got single character pulps that made it to radio. In 1941, The Avenger, who was actually Richard Henry Benson, one of the crime stoppers in the pulps. This publication was done by Street and Smith, and it was a local series of radio, WHN in New York from 1941 to 1943. Many of you out there may be familiar with the Avengers series from 1946, which was Jim Bannon, the biochemist. That series was syndicated by Charles Michelson and had that great ice skating music by Doc Whipple. Pete Rice was a Western pulp magazine published in the 30s by Street and Smith, and there was a juvenile adventure series. Pete Rice on WOR locally in 1935. And sorry, Wendy, but we don't have any audio or scripts of that. I've been looking for years and years and years, and if I do find one, I'll let you know. The Spider was another one of the top detective crime stoppers and pulps, and he was the rival to the Schadow. He was published by Popular Publications, and he had a couple of different radio series in the 30s, although I've written about this, and this appeared in Blood and Thunder, which was published by Ed Holtz at his Morania Press. I got to give Ed a plug. The Spider was on radio very briefly in the 1930s. The author Cornell Woolrich, who was prolific author of pulp stories and short stories, had many of his yarns adapted for radio on such series as Suspense, Mole, Mystery Theater, and Escape. But unfortunately, he did not have any Weird Tales, so I'm not going to talk about him anymore. But I'm going to focus again on Weird Tales, and I want to give you a brief history of the pulp magazine. It started out in March of 1923, published by Rural Publishing with the editor Edward Baird. The publication was originally created by Jacob Henenberger and J.M. Langston. By November of 24, it had been bought up by Popular Publications, and Farnsworth Wright became the editor. And you can see that the covers have changed slightly. By the time we get to the mid to late 1930s, there are some very provocative covers, including the one from March of 1938. Margaret Brundage was one of the great pulp artists. She doesn't get enough credit, but she did some fantastic artwork for pulp magazines, including Weird Tales. By May of 1940, Farnsworth Wright ceased being editor, and Dorothy McElwaith, who had been the editor at Short Stories, became editor of Weird Tales, and the interesting covers continued. This one is by Hans Bach. And Weird Tales continued until September of 1954, offering fantasy and horror and science fiction type of stories for over 20 years. The last issue, September 5th, 1954. A total of 279 issues were published. It was a monthly, then a bi-monthly, then a monthly. So it was during the 2 decades it was published, there were various time periods in which it was published. What do we got here? Okay, so now I'm going to the different radio series that had weird stories from Weird Tales adapted. And I've separated this into two categories. On the left are the dedicated series, and those include 3 that were specifically for stories that were from Weird Tales, or predominantly Weird Tales. And then on the right, a whole bunch of different radio programs, many of which are you familiar with, and we'll get into each of these. But you can see there's just a plethora of programs which garner stories from Weird Tales. The first one, Weird Tales, it was one of the earliest horror programs on radio. It was aired by Cleveland station WTAM in 1930. Edward Smith was the director of the WTAM players. He had been involved with radio drama since its infancy at WGY in Schenectady, New York, my hometown. So I got to plug the hometown station, WGY, when they started radio drama in 1922. By the late 1920s, Edward Smith had moved to WTAM in Cleveland and continued his radio excursions into radio drama, including adapting 5 stories from Weird Tales in October of 1930. This information on this slide comes from various Cleveland newspapers and also the work done by pulp historian Will Oliver. The next series was called Weird Tales series, and that was just a couple of years later, in 1933, produced in Hollywood by Hollywood Radio Attractions. Irving Fogel was the director with the scriptwriter Oliver Drake. And the program, they worked with another syndication firm, McGregor and Solly, who was based at that time in San Francisco. Irving Fogel was in Hollywood, so they had California pretty much covered. And they were very interested in getting Weird Tales on the air. They included the cast members William Farnham, Jason Robards Sr., who is the father of Jason Robards, who many are familiar with. And they adapted at least 3 stories out of Weird Tales, various issues from 1930s. Unfortunately, this program did not last. They ran out of money, and it was during the Depression, and unfortunately, like many of the syndication firms or their packaging firms in the 1930s, they only lasted a couple of years, and unfortunately, this program really never made it on the air. However, there is audio of a half episode of this 30-minute program available at Randy Riddle's website down there. I've listed the audio link, but if you just Google Randy Riddle Esoteric Old Time Radio, you should be able to come up with his whole listing of really fantastic, obscure programs like this Weird Tales series. Then we go on to Stay Tuned for Terror. This is probably the most famous of the Weird Tales dedicated programs. It was formed in 1945, syndicated by Johnny Neblett, his radio production firm in Chicago. Johnny Neblett was a former broadcaster from the Midwest who had gone into Chicago in the early 1940s, continued his work in sports, but also got into radio drama and storytelling. And he was contacted by both Robert Bloch and James Doolittle, who I've listed under the cast there, for doing a 15-minute horror program. They collaborated with Burl Adams, who bankrolled this series. Burl Adams went on to become one of the co-founders of Mercury Records and later a big executive at MCA, which Music Corporation of America, the big talent agency out in Hollywood. Howard Keegan was the director. Keegan was a well-known director in Chicago. He had done Lights Out and several other programs at various stations in Chicago. And they enlisted Ramel Fay for the organ music. The cast of the program included James Doolittle, who used the stage name Craig Dennis, Don Doolittle, who was James's brother, and then actresses Angeline Orr, who was best known for her role in Captain Midnight, and also Amira Rustler. 39 episodes of Stay Tuned for Terror were recorded at the WBBM studios in Chicago. It's the CBS affiliate at that time. All of the episodes, the scripts were written by Robert Bloch. There were 24 from Weird Tales, 7 from other pulp magazines, including Fantastic Adventures and Strange Stories, then what's most interesting about this series is that there were 8 original radio dramas, 8 scripts that Robert Black had only done for radio and had not appeared in any other medium that we have been able to find. And one of the stories actually aired on the big broadcast a few months ago. I got Jill and Murray to air that, and I'm not sure. So let me know if those of you out there listening this evening heard it. Prior to the big broadcast, of course, the program was broadcast in U.S. and Canada and also the territory of Hawaii in 1945 through about 1950-51, with local sponsors such as a service station and also a dry cleaner in Lethbridge, Canada. And on the right there, Robert Bloch had a great sense of humor. And he would dress up in these all kinds of disguises and costumes and things. And that was what he did for Stay Tuned for Terror. And he actually published that in Variety magazine and some other publications. So I thought that was pretty interesting. To the listing of Stay Tuned for Terror radio scripts and titles from Weird Tales, it was always thought that Mr. Black had written the stories in Weird Tales and then presented them on Stay Tuned for Terror in 1945. But as you'll see from that listing, that isn't the case. Some of the stories were published as early as May of 1935. That's A Secret in the Tomb, while others were not published until 1949, including Satan's Phonograph. It's interesting that Robert Bloch, saved these scripts for Stay Tuned for Terror and actually adapted them to Weird Tales magazine, later years in the 1940s. Of the 39 episodes, you'll see there, those 2 are asterisk. Lizzie Borden Took an Axe, and The Boogeyman Will Get You from most of 1946. We do have audio of those. For decades, Stay Tuned for Terror was the holy grail for OTR horror enthusiasts. And a couple of years ago, a Canadian collector and radio personality, David Lennox, some of you may be familiar with him from Facebook. He has his David Lennox Lacquer pages site. He does a lot of disc transcriptions and has a lot of very interesting programs which he posts on Facebook. He had these programs and listed them in a catalog back in the 1980s. And when I emailed him, he said, I didn't realize these are this rare. And he released them, and actually Max Schmidt was the first one to air them on his program. Max is out of WBAI-FM in New York. And I actually contacted Max and asked him about these a couple of years ago. He said, oh, yeah, David Lennox. And I said, great. And unfortunately, Mr. Bloch died in 1994, and he had not heard the program since 1945. There's a collection of Mr. Bloch's papers out at the American Heritage Center, University of Wyoming in Laramie, and there's really nothing on this program out there except for one ad from Weird Tales, which we'll get to in just a second. Unfortunately, Mr. Bloch did not save any of the audio or any of the scripts. So the research on the program that I and others have been doing has been limited to looking up periodicals and various radio magazines. But now we have 2 episodes. And we're going to play one here. The Boogeyman Will Get You. And go ahead, Frank.
Stay tuned for terror.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned for terror. Stay tuned for shivers and excitement. Listen to Craig Dennis in The Boogeyman Will Get You, written by Robert Bloch for Weird Tales magazine and adapted by the author especially for this program. You'll hear it now if you
Stay tuned for terror.
And now, here is Craig Dennis in The Boogeyman Will Get You.
You're afraid of the dark, aren't you? Oh, but you are. I know all about you. Do you understand? You were afraid of the dark when you were a child. Not because of robbers or thieves or murderers. Children don't think of such things. You were afraid of the dark because of the boogeyman. That's the name your parents used. Boogeyman. One of those smart, sophisticated, grown-up words. But there is terror behind it. When you were a child, you knew what the boogeyman looked like. You would see him in your dreams. That black, grinning shape with the wicked red eyes and the clutching claws. You heard his buzzing voice mumbling to you in sleep when you had nightmares. And you'd wake up screaming for your mother. Admit it. You did scream, didn't you? Now that you're grown up, you laugh about it. But deep down inside, you're still afraid. You say you don't believe such things? It's all superstition. Then why are you still afraid of the dark? Why do you keep the lights on when you're home alone at night? I'll tell you why. Because you know it's true. There are such things as monsters. There are such evil beings. And the boogeyman will get you if you don't watch out. Well, what do you think of it?
Marvelous. I don't know how you do it, Walter.
Great stuff. You say it's part of a new essay?
That's right. Looks like I'll have it finished this week.
But, Walter, you work too hard. Cooped up all day long in that cottage of yours. Why don't you relax?
That's just why I rented the cottage, to stay cooped up and get some work done. A book doesn't write itself, you know.
I don't see how you fellas do it. Writing, I mean. Me, I'll stick to the insurance business.
Life insurance must be a wonderful thing.
Mean to tell me you're not insured, man?
Oh, wait a minute now, darling. Walter, you'll have to excuse that husband of mine. He's always trying to sell something. Louis, let the poor man alone. We invite him over here tonight for a visit, remember?
I appreciate it, too. You folks are very kind to ask me in, but I'm apt to bore you with my essays.
Bore me? Oh, nonsense. You nearly scared me stiff.
Is that why Nancy isn't around? Do I scare her, too?
Oh, of course not. The child's probably out with her gang. You know, the Bobby Sox crowd.
Nancy is a very remarkable young woman. She didn't strike me as a typical member of the younger generation at all.
Well, she isn't really. Nancy is very mature for 17. Too mature, I'm afraid. Sometimes she comes out with something that surprises me.
Really?
Yes. Now, take what she was saying about you the other day. Oh, guess I put my foot in at that time.
Nancy said something about me? What was it?
Oh, nothing. Nothing at all. Matter of fact, I've forgotten just exactly what it was.
Please, tell me. I won't be offended. I'm curious. I've noticed that daughter of yours watching me, and I've wondered about it.
Well, you'll have to excuse her, Walter. She's just a kid, after all. She said, well, we were talking about why we never saw you in the daytime, out on the tennis court or at the beach. And she said, that's not so strange. Vampires always sleep in the daytime.
Vampires?
Don't adolescents get the funniest notions sometimes?
Yes. Yes, they do.
She's awfully interested in you, really, Walter. After all, you're handsome, a stranger here at the resort, an older man. I do believe she's getting a crush on you, but tries to hide it by crazy remarks.
Calling you a vampire. Where does she get such ideas? Reads too many books, I'd say.
Yes.
Sly kid, though. I asked her why she thought you were a vampire. Know what she said?
What did she say?
Said it was because you didn't eat any food.
She said what?
Nancy said she'd asked around town at the grocery store and the butcher shop, and that you never bought any food.
I shut her up in a hurry, though. Young lady, I said, apparently you don't know much about bachelors' eating habits. Did you ever hear of places called restaurants? You should have seen the look on Nancy's face when I... Why, hello, Nancy. We were just talking about you.
So I heard. Well, your manners, dear. Aren't you going to say hello to Mr. King?
Good evening, Nancy.
Nancy, Mr. King spoke to you. Nancy, what are you doing, child?
She's making the sign of the cross, an ancient custom. It's supposed to ward off vampires.
That's a good one. Well, young lady, how come you were running around in the dark tonight? Aren't you afraid of evil spirits?
Don't joke about things you don't understand, Father. Nancy, that's no way to talk to your father. Where were you?
Oh, just walking. With Billy Leggett. Up in the hills under the hemlock trees.
I suppose that's where you lost your scarf, young lady.
Oh, yes, I didn't know I'd lost it.
Well, folks, I've got to be running along. It's getting late.
So soon?
Yes, it's getting a little late.
All right, Walter. See you around. You sure you don't mind walking home alone?
Oh, of course not.
Maybe we could send Nancy along with you to protect you from vampires.
Nancy was a silly little girl. I knew it. But still, she upset me. Maybe it was because she was so beautiful and she hated me so. Thought I was a vampire. Just a silly little girl with a queer idea in her pretty head. I wondered what she was trying to do. Tonight, when I got back to the cottage, I found out. I stood in front of the door and saw something lying on the path. It was Nancy's scarf. What had she been doing here? She said she had gone for a walk to the hills, near the hemlock trees, but here was her scarf. And as I opened the door, my hand touched something. A wreath on the doorknob. A wreath of hemlock. Hemlock. That's what you put on the door to keep vampires away. I thought about it all night. What was that girl up to? The next day, I investigated a little. I found out plenty. Nancy had spread talk all over the village. Talk about me, about my habits, how I stayed in all day and came out at night, about my not eating at home. She even tried to call New York to check up on me, whether I really had a job and so on. She told the minister I didn't dare come to church and said I had no mirrors in my house because a vampire couldn't look into mirrors. This wasn't funny anymore. The foolish kid was making trouble for me. Somehow she had this mad obsession about vampires. I had to talk to her. So that night I started over for her place, but before I arrived, I ran into her by accident on the path.
Oh, you startled me.
Sorry, Nancy. I didn't mean to frighten you. But say, I've been looking for you. Let's take a walk, shall we?
Well, really, Mr. King, I have a date.
Only for a few minutes, my dear, and why so formal? Call me Walter. By the way, I seem to have a speck in my eye. Have you a mirror in your purse?
A mirror? Why, yes. Here it is.
Oh, good. Let's see. Ah. There, I've got it. Oh, thank you.
You looked into the mirror.
Of course. And I found that hemlock on my doorknob last night, too. Oh, don't look so startled, Nancy. I know all about your ideas. You thought I was a vampire, didn't you? Just because I work all day and eat in restaurants and walk at night. But you're wrong. You know that now, don't you? I look in mirrors and touch hemlock and all the rest.
Yes, I see. I guess you think I'm an awful fool, Walter.
Not at all. I think you're a very lovely girl. I wish it wasn't so dark out here so I could see your hair. You have beautiful hair, Nancy. Look, the moon is rising. I can see you now. Nancy, you aren't afraid of me anymore.
No. Walter, I never was afraid. Not really. I just thought up all this vampire stuff to make you notice me. And besides, all vampires are tall and dark and handsome, like you.
You're a very clever little girl, Nancy. Very clever. Only I wish you hadn't gone to the police today.
Police? Then you know?
Yes, I found that out, too. A search warrant for my house.
Oh, but that was all a joke. And you aren't really a vampire, so it doesn't matter. When they come, we'll laugh at them.
I'll laugh at them. You won't.
Walter, what are you doing? Let go of me. Walter, what's happening to you? You're changing. Walter.
Too bad you were such a meddling little fool, Nancy. I can't let you get away now. It would spoil everything. You guessed too much.
Oh, Walter, let me go. Walter, oh, good heavens. Then it is true. You are a vampire.
No, my dear. I'm not a vampire. I'm just a werewolf.
You have just heard Craig Dennis in The Boogeyman Will Get You, written by Robert Bloch, author of stories in Weird Tales magazine. The original music was conceived and played by Romel Faye. In just a moment, we'll tell you about the next story in
Stay tuned for terror.
In the meantime,
So was it a surprise to everybody that he turned out to be a werewolf instead of a vampire? Well, hey. Black had a great sense of humor. In addition to werewolves, of course, and vampires, Black's stories included Egyptology and actual events. So Stay Tuned for Terror was an interesting series. The organ music by Romel Faye. Did anybody recognize the theme? It's from Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, and Black specifically chose that as a tribute to the Universal Pictures horror films of the 30s. I thought that was kind of interesting. The cast: Craig Dennis as Walter King, Angeline Orr as Nancy, Don Doolittle was Nancy's father and also the announcer, and Elmira Rustler was Nancy's mother. I don't know who the sound effects artists were or the engineer. I'm still trying to determine that. Howard Keegan was the director. At the end, Don Doolittle, as the announcer, says that they'll present next week's story. Well, as a transcribed syndicated series, sent out to radio stations all over on transcription discs, they weren't presented in any specific order. So I believe that the preview for next week's show was done by a local announcer as a local station, whatever station was broadcasting the show. So let's move on to another, probably the most famous story that Robert Bloch wrote for Weird Tales. Now, of course, Robert Bloch is known for, best known as the author of Psycho, the novel that was published in 1959 and that Alfred Hitchcock adapted. James Stefano actually did the adaptation for Hitchcock for the great movie that Hitchcock released in 1960. But yours truly, Jack the Ripper, which was originally published in the July 1943 issue of Weird Tales, is perhaps Bloch's most famous story. Again, the artist there is Boris Dolgoff, who did that great Green Reaper with a knife, and he also did the advertisement that we just saw while the show was playing. Let me see, modern duty. Oh yes, the Jack the Ripper. Of course, it's from 1888 in London. Well, Bloch's story, he made that present-day Chicago in 1945, and it actually got pretty decent. Actually, 1943, it was offered on several different radio programs. It first was on the Kate Smith Hour in January of 1944. Block did not adapt the story. It was adapted by Ken Crossan, and Otto Moss starred in that. It was a 15-minute, Kate Smith Hour was a 60-minute show, and they usually had a drama or a comedy in each episode during the 1940s. And it was, I think it was a 10 to 12-minute adaptation of Jack the Ripper for the Kate Smith Hour. Then the following year, on the Molay Mystery, was the 30-minute adaptation by Constance Smith, Carl Swenson, and Carl Swenson with a K, yay, and Carl Frank with a C. They were the co-stars of that particular adaptation. Carl Frank was Jack Carmody, and Carl Swenson was Sir Guy Hollis, who travels from London to Chicago to investigate the Ripper. He thinks that the Ripper is still alive in Chicago, and I'm not going to give away any more of the plot for those of you who don't know it. I'll provide that story for you, or some of the audio if you're looking for the audio to see how that turns out. 1945, of course, it was in Stay Tuned for Terror, and I'm seeking both the script and the audio for this 15-minute program. Then in January of 48, yours truly, Jack the Ripper, got an encore presentation with Everett Sloan and Clayton Superman Bud Collier in the lead roles. And I'm going to skip down to Murder by Experts because that was also a reprint of the Molay Mystery Theater. Murder by Experts, which was done by Bob Arthur and Robert Arthur and David Cogan. Where basically it was the best of the mystery, murder, and kind of horror programs. Most of them that were done on shows like Molay Mystery and Suspense and some other programs, The Whistler. But I think the most interesting adaptation of Yours Truly, Jack the Ripper occurred in 1949, the University of Scranton Radio Workshop in Scranton, Pennsylvania. I tried to contact these folks, and they were very interested, but they had not saved any scripts or audio as of yet. But I'm still working with the archives there. It was a 30-minute Sunday show where they did various adaptations of just who knows, all kinds of different stories. And I'm curious as to how they picked Robert Bloch's story, Yours Truly, Jack the Ripper. So I'm still looking for audio for that. From here, I'm going to move on to the anthology shows that offered Weird Tales adaptations. In the first story, The Dunwich Horror by H.P. Lovecraft, who was one of the great horror authors. Many of you will know his stories. He wrote many stories for Weird Tales, a great writer of horror and fantasy. The Dunwich Horror was one of the few, if not the only, one or two programs that was actually adapted by Lovecraft stories on Suspense, or in radio actually. For Suspense, William Spear was the producer, director, editor at that time, and he enlisted Sylvia Richards to adapt Lovecraft's tale. Burns Surrey did the all-important sound effects. And in the cast were Ronald Coleman as Dr. Armistice, Bill Johnstone, Wally Mayer, Joseph Kearns, and Elliot Lewis as Wilbur, the monster who's terrorizing the small town of Dunwich in Massachusetts. There is audio of this available. So I suggest if you're a fan of Lovecraft or Suspense or radio horror that you seek this out. It's available on many websites and on YouTube. Another story that appeared on Suspense was The Ghost Hunt. Just a couple of years later. The author is H.R. Wakefield. That's his photo there on the right. Wakefield's story was originally published in Weird Tales in March of 1948, and it was aired on Suspense June 23rd of 1949. By that time, in 1949, William Spear had left the program, and Anton M. Leader had been brought in from New York to Hollywood to produce and direct Suspense. Leader enlisted Walter Brown Newman to adapt the script, and again, we find Burns Surrey doing the great sound effects. This was the time that they were introducing into suspense, unusual actors and actresses to play parts, including Ralph Edwards, of course, who we know is famous from Truth or Consequences. And in this particular story, Edwards is Smiley, a radio disc jockey who doesn't believe in ghosts and is going to spend the evening in a haunted house. And he brings along a wire recorder to record any kind of sounds or anything. And without giving the plot away, it's a fascinating story. Edwards does a great job for this. And we have audio for that available as well. Next, we move on. One of the most famous writers, and everybody's familiar with Ray Bradbury. Before Bradbury was known for his science fiction work, he published about 30 stories of weird, fantastic adventures in Weird Tales. And one of these was The Crowd. It appeared in the May 1943 issue of Weird Tales, and it was broadcast on Suspense September 21st, 1950. Elliot Lewis was the producer-director, and he enlisted scriptwriters Morton Fine and David Friedkin, a famous writing duo who did Broadway's My Beat and many, many other shows, including Bold Adventure. The cast for this particular suspense play included Dana Andrews. Let me see. It's Johnny Stellano, Howard McNair, who we all know from the Andy Griffith Show as Floyd the Barber, Jack Crucian, Irene Tedrow, and Truda Marson. The Crowd, Dana Andrews as Johnny Stellano was seeking to locate a dead man. So, the plot is kind of strange for this one. Again, we have audio for this, so I suggest you look it out. And also, I have to give Joe Webb a plug there. His suspense project, Blogspot, is great. Every day he puts up a new suspense episode and gets some really good details on the history. And I think he included The Crown in the previous one. But check out Joe's blog online. Also for Ray Bradbury, Suspense did, not Suspense, I'm sorry, Radio City Playhouse. Again, from March 1943. The Wind from Ray Bradbury was adapted for October 30th, 1949. Harry Junkin was the director and host of this series on NBC, which aired for several years in the 1940s and early 1950s. The cast for this particular episode included James Monks as Alan, an individual who is fearing the wind, and the sound effects on this are just amazing. Again, by Vern Suri. Lyle Sedro and Bryna Rayburn are a married couple, Herb and Jane, who try to assist Alan, but it's a very, very trying story for the couple. But again, I don't want to give away much of the plot. So again, we have audio for this, and again, another Ray Bradbury story. He did not. I'm not sure who adapted this. Bradbury did not adapt his stories. He had many, many stories adapted to radio, but he never did the adaptations, and I'm not sure why. Okay. Then we move on to one of the more interesting and funny stories, The Haunted Trailer. It's on The Mysterious Traveler. It was originally published in Weird Tales, January 1942, written by Bob Arthur as Death Thumbs a Ride. So 10 years later, when Arthur and Cogan were producing and directing Mysterious Traveler, they pulled this one out. Arthur had written only 4 tales in the Weird Tales magazine, and this one was selected for The Mysterious Traveler. Of course, Maurice Tarplin starred as Mysterious Traveler, the host and storyteller. Larry Haynes played Spike Higgins, the ghost. And the plot is James Stevens as Melvin, who takes a cross-country trip from New York to California and picks up this traveling ghost, and it's pretty funny. We have audio for this as well, so I suggest that you check this one out. I'm going to move on to Nelson Olmsted. Okay. Nelson Olmsted was one of the great single solo storytellers during the classic golden age of radio. The Minnesota native was educated in Texas at the University of Texas in Austin. where he was engaged in drama and also did some local radio programs on Austin stations. In the late 1930s, he moved to Fort Worth and had one of the best local horror programs, Black Night. Now, this is listed in John Dunning's On the Air book, and there's a couple of articles that have been written about this, but unfortunately, we do not have any audio or scripts of Black Night. But Olmsted continued his radio work in the late 1930s throughout the 1950s, and did these shows from Chicago under various titles, including The World's Greatest Stories, Story for Tonight, Nelson Olmsted and Company, which he brought in additional cast members, and Sleep No More. Sleep No More was either 15 minutes or 30 minutes in the 1950s, and perhaps some of you will still have those LPs that were released, Sleep No More, from the 1950s. Olmsted was a fan of many different authors. So this list here includes one of the rare ones, again, from Lovecraft, and I've cheated a little bit here. The Music of Eric Zahn. It was originally published by Lovecraft in the National Amateur in March of 22, but was later reprinted in Weir's Tale twice and aired by Nelson Olmsted in May of 1943. So we have to count this one. Mindret Lord had a couple of different stories adapted by Olmsted. First Night, which was published in Weird Tales in July of 41, aired a couple of times on Olmsted programs, 43 and 1947. And then also Lil, which Olmsted told in November of 1946. Another author, Paul Ernst, his story Escape, Weird Tales, July 1938, was also aired twice by Nelson Olmsted, 1944, and then much later in 1957. Then we come across Ray Bradbury once again, The Night, which Bradbury published in the July 46 issue of Weird Tales, aired in 1947. And this was from his Greentown series, which was based on his birthplace, Waukegan, Illinois. And Bradbury wrote several stories in the Greentown series, and so far as I can tell, discovered that The Night is the only one that is so far has been adapted for radio. Then we move on to a very interesting local series, The Man with Book and Pipe, and I'm going to close with this one. The Man with Book and Pipe was a local series on station WPEN in Philadelphia. It aired on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule during the summer and early fall of 1945. This particular episode, which we have audio of at archive.org, was written by Harry Kuttner. It's called The Graveyard Rats and was originally published in March of 1936. The host of The Man with Book and Pipe, if you can picture the man sitting in his most comfortable chair with his book and his pipe telling these great stories, was Francis Falanda, and I really don't have any information about him, and I'll admit, I don't know if that's the correct spelling of his name. I haven't been able to find it any place. But he told the stories, and he selected many, many different stories from authors, including The Telltale Heart from Poe. Of course, any horror program was going to do a Poe story, The Telltale Heart, and also The Monkey's Paw by W.W. Jacobs, and many other stories. This is the only one that I found so far that's been adapted from Weird Tales. I expect there are others, and I'm trying to get a log of The Man with Book and Pipe, but that has not been very successful, as they only listed a couple of titles in newspapers, and I'm still checking for the archives of station WPEN in Philadelphia. So with all of that, that was a quick overview of Weird Tales on the Air, and of course, all of those goblins and ghosts and vampires are coming for you, and in celebration of Halloween this month. That's our take on Weird Tales on the Air. Any questions?
Not a question, but an observation. Thank you so much, Karl. That is really a wonderful overview and great material there, very dense. I appreciate that.
If I can, I don't know if I'm muted or not.
No, we can hear you.
Okay, I just want to say that back in April, I spent a day with Karl at his principal office, otherwise known as the Library of Congress, and it was
That
a
was
great
March.
day for me to. It was March, okay, all right, but it was a wonderful day for me, and Karl took me around, and they all know Karl, and Karl knows all of them by their first names, and he took me around to all three buildings and all different sections, and I even got to watch him work. So I was kind of shadowing him for the day, and it was a complete day. And if there's a better researcher than Karl, I haven't spent any time with him, and it was just a real pleasure to spend that day with him and learn.
That's very kind of you, Frank, and any of our people in the audience there. If you're interested in getting and researching at the Library of Congress, feel free to email me. I'll be more than happy to put you through the ringer, as I did Frank that day.
Yeah, we walked quite a few miles in those tunnels underneath to the various buildings, and but it was really a very interesting and fun day.
Any other questions, comments, suggestions?
Thank you for supplying the composer and name of the theme for what the Nights of Terror. I had found it amusing when I talk about how the original music was composed by so and so. Excuse me, it really wasn't composed by them at all. Like they snatched it from what was it, Tchaikovsky?
Right. Yes, a Swan Lake. Yeah.
I have a question.
Okay.
Just a second, so I don't have an echo here. I'm impressed that you work for the Library of Congress, and there's a lot of great stuff that's been showing up on the webpage, which we're all very thankful for. Is there any opportunity to have a better idea what's in the Library of Congress regarding old-time radio, and any chance as copyrights expire or availability to get things in circulation?
I'll have to give you the very, very short answer, because I could take the rest of the time. It would be midnight. But much of the collections at the Library of Congress have been cataloged, but there's several collections. One that I'm working on, the Armed Forces Radio and Television Service, that has not been cataloged, and there are thousands and thousands of transcriptions discs that we don't know. We know what the program name, for example, Suspense or Broadway's might be, or John Steele Adventure, but we don't know the title. So we're going through all those and trying to determine which episodes exist. So that is an ongoing project that I'm working with the staff. And of course, the staff works on many other collections there as well. There's the NBC collection. Most of that has been digitized. Regarding copyrights, that is something that I work on every day, and to many people that's a dirty word. But copyrighted material, audio, in order to get something out of the Library of Congress, you have to have permission from the current rights holder. So getting the material out is very time consuming, but it can be done. You just have to be very patient. So we're working on that. In fact, I wrote about a program, Crime Classics. If you're familiar with Crime Classics, Elliot Lewis, written by Morton Fine and David Friedkin. There was one episode of Crime Classics that was, of the 53 or 4 episodes, there was one that was not extant. Well, we found it in the Armed Forces Radio and Television Services collection at Library of Congress, and we're working with the rights holders of Crime Classics, Morton Fine and David Friedkin, to get that out now, and that will be coming out soon. I wrote about that about 3 or 4 years ago. That's on the Old Time Radio Researchers website and their Old Time Radio Times periodical. But some of the others, it's very difficult to determine the rights holders for some of these programs, you have to go through all the different players, the writer, the director, the station, if it was station or the network, the producer, the sponsor, the ad agency. I mean, we can go on and on and on. And I know Frank had asked me about talking about copyright. So Frank, I know you set me up for this. But anyhow, yes, the copyright is a very complicated situation with radio because it starts with a script, and of course there's audio as well, and there's all kinds of different rights involved, distribution rights, performance rights, and it's a nightmare, but it's a fun nightmare. Actually, you know, there's always discussions. Well, everything is in public domain. Well, it's not. Even though federal copyrights for sound recordings did not exist, believe it or not, until 1972. Before that, most music publishers, you know, they submitted this sheet music, and that was good enough to copyright their songs. It wasn't until 1972. However, with the legislation that's occurred over the last 50 years, most of the programs are not going to be run out of copyright until 2067. So that's what we're up against. Has that answered your question?
It was a good answer. One thing that also comes to mind specifically that you may know the answer to is Archie Andrews. I remember hearing there was a bunch in the library that aren't in circulation. Have they gone in circulation since, or?
I don't know. Again, if you wanted to, I think that was an NBC program, and if they are the Library of Congress, it would be an NBC collection, and you would have to get permission from NBC. NBC does grant permission. They're very good at granting permission for, you know, personal research use. I've gotten programs from them before, and from other rights holders from different collections. It's the commercial use that is always the bugaboo. You know, how much money is involved. Of course, you know, money is it's always the money. Follow the money. It always boils down to money and how much do they want, and how much are vendors and other people willing to pay to get this stuff out of the Library of Congress, because not only do you have to pay the rights holders, or you also have to pay the library's fees for digitizing the programs. So that I can't tell you. I don't know if the Archie Andrews, I'd have to check on that. The Archie Andrews that are in the Library of Congress, if they've been released or not, I couldn't tell you.
Even if they were available just for personal use, that would at least get multiple copies in existence.
Right, but they sign you sign a contract with the rights holders, and if you distribute this, you're in big trouble. As a personal researcher, you know, I had to sign a contract that says I wasn't going to distribute this, you know, beyond my research use. So, you know, I mean, if 5 people wanted to get it out, they would probably, you know, allow that. You know, that has happened in the past. Again, the big bugaboo is the commercial use, putting these out, you know, to make money. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Now
Certainly.
we have a raised hand. John William has a question for you, Karl.
That was a lovely broadcast. Thank you very much. And this is my first
Certainly.
time at this meeting. I'll try to make it a real quick yes or no question for you in the interest of time.
There's never a quickie question to me.
Is the work that the Library of Congress doing in this archiving, digitizing, and analyzing, is that something one can read about online? Do they've got a site on their website? Just curious, because this is our national heritage right there.
Right. Absolutely. Some program, they write about a lot of programs on their website. If you
And you don't have to answer
search
it now.
online,
Maybe afterwards it's in an email exchange or something. That'd be lovely to read about.
certainly. They don't put radio programs online because of copyright issues. There are some music, you know,
It's not the radio,
and they do write about some radio programs.
It's not about the radio program. It's the material. It's the. Let's do it a different word instead of program. It's the activity, project, whatever you want to call it, that the Library of Congress is doing to analyze these material for which they can't figure out, or they're trying to understand which ones, and catalog it.
yes, some of that is online on their blog.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
And of course, the Library of Congress's web address is loc.gov.
Right.
Karl,
You're muted.
Mark Bush here.
Uh-huh.
I watched Dracula for the first time many years ago. I was struck by the fact that the only music played in it is when he attends the opera with his two prospective victims. There's no other music written for that particular version of it.
Okay. I didn't realize that, but now that's very interesting. I'll have to go back and watch that. So, yes, okay.
Yeah, it's worth a second watch anytime.
Which
Yes.
version of Dracula was that?
James Whale, I think. Bela Lugosi was the star.
Right.
It's a great classic, that movie. Any more questions, curiosities, observations for Karl? Well, I have to say this is a wonderful program. And thank you very, very much, Karl. I know you work very hard. And of course, the Library of Congress has such a rich collection of stuff. It must be kind of fun to go to work there.
It's fun and frustrating at the same time.
All the best jobs are, Karl. All the best.
That's right. That's right. Oh, and while you still have me on, I did look up one. There was one script of the Sea Hound written by let's see, where is this here? The Howard Rodman Papers at the Wisconsin Historical Society in Madison, Wisconsin, has one script of the Sea Hound from 1948. It's in the Howard Rodman Papers. So that's the only one I could find quickly.
We certainly did find it quickly, especially since you were doing the presentation.
Yeah.
It's not like you
Yeah.
quiet
While I was listening to Stay Tuned for Terror, I looked up that one. So.
I wondered how you could do that.
I have a question. I don't know if it falls within your purvey of knowledge, but as far as music is concerned, they're supposed to have a tremendous collection of music going way, way back. Is it possible to photocopy copyrighted music, or can you just have to hand transcribe it?
Oh no, you could photocopy it. Again, let's see this. The copyrighted music. I've gotten copies of copyrighted music before. I think you'd have to. It's on an individual basis. You would have to check with the music division, in the Performing Arts Reading Room. Okay. I'm not sure if their restrictions are as if it's restricted as much as the sound is. It may be, but again, on an individual, and again, it depends upon the year. Any music published before or unpublished before. What is it now? We're 1928, 95 years. The early 20s going back should all be in public domain. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if there are no further questions for Karl, thank you very much. We'll give you a virtual round of applause. Most people are on mute, so you're not going to hear it, but.
Hey, great job, Karl.
Thank you very, very much, Karl. I hope this will be the beginning of many more presentations to come.
Oh, Frank! I can see Frank now. He's twisting my arm.
Well, I mean, he has to line up a lot of programs in a year.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, and the next time, Karl, hopefully, Karl was supposed to be doing the presentation from my home tonight, and his plans changed. So hopefully the next time, Karl, you'll be able to do that.
Yes, because there's research to do in Philadelphia. There's research everywhere. So, I always look for opportunities to do research on old time radio. So,
That's great. Well, thank you so much. And now, has everyone finished their homework? Are you ready to hear the answers to the quiz and see how you did? You stacked up against some of, quite frankly, Frank Morgan's fiendish questions or choices of answers. You know the ones
Not
I
so
mean.
scary. Not so scary.
Just wait till you hear the answers.
Exactly.
Take it away, Sally.
All right. So get your answer sheets out. Get your marking pens so we can check our answers. If we do really well, maybe we can plan a class field trip to the Library of Congress. But only if you can get your permission slips in and signed. I don't know. We've had some trouble with permission slips in the past. Just stay together as a group. Don't make me get one of those clash leases.
That include all the way from Minnesota?
I mean, you got to get your own transportation, but you can get here. All right, so I'm going to end the poll so that we can see, because it looks like, we had quite a few people fill out on here. So I'm going to end it now. Okay, I'm sharing the results. Can you see them?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so number 1, this old-time radio performer also hosted a radio game show, Are You a Genius? And who was that? We were kind of all over the place. Most people thought it was Mel Blanc. Some said Phil Harris and Eddie Cantor and Al Jolson. The correct answer goes to the majority in this case. A. Mel Blanc is correct. A. Number 2, Dimension X was the precursor of which of the following shows? Ooh, was it the Gimme with X-1? Or was he trying to throw us off the scent? And was it perhaps something like Brave Tomorrow? Nobody thought so. And they were for the good choice to not pick that one because the answer is X-1. A, X-1 is the correct answer. He said it was not so scary. He said. Number 3. The Adventures of Frank Merriwell chronicled the college years of a young man in the early 20th century. Which university did he attend? Most said Yale, some said Princeton, one said Harvard. The correct answer is Yale. Yale. B. Yale. Number 4, Casey was the crime photographer for which newspaper? Ooh, we were kind of split between A and B, the Illustrated Press or the Morning Press. I'm glad someone chose the National Enquirer. That one made me laugh. I liked it. And the majority does win this one again. B, the Morning Express. The Morning Express is the correct answer. But what if it was an evening paper? No. Okay. Boy, tough crowd. Number 5. In his alter ego of Britt Reed, the Green Hornet often met with the police commissioner at the restaurant in this location. Wow, nobody thought it was the Playboy Club? I'm shocked. Was it the Downtown Club, the Uptown Club, or the Civic Club? Clearly, we had no idea where he was having dinner. We have no idea. We need to listen to more Green Hornet. But we will give it to the 5 of you that got it correct. The correct answer is D, the Civic Club. The Civic Club. I know Dennis got that one right. He had that face. He knew that one. I know. Number 6. Everyone knows Lamont Cranston's gal pal was Margot Lane, and several actresses played the part on radio, but which one did not? Wow. We didn't know this one either. We were all over the place. I'm a little disappointed in us as a group. We clearly didn't study when the answers are all over the place. It's somebody's fault, and it's clearly never the teacher's. No, it's you didn't study. Yeah, obviously it wasn't my instruction at all, which was nothing. So clearly couldn't have been it. But we were split between Agnes Moorehead and Frances Robinson. The majority said Leslie Woods, and one said Grace Matthews. Well, 4 of you got it correct. C. Frances Robinson is correct. C. Frances Robinson did not play the role of Margot Lane. It's always those ones that are the not questions that trip the kids up. I tell you, it still trips the adults up too. Can't get past them. Number 7, this writer who created the character which led to the radio program The Fat Man was a veteran of both World Wars and is buried in Arlington Cemetery. Who is he? Nobody thought it was Ernest Hemingway. One thought maybe Mickey Spillane, but we were kind of split between Samuel D. Hammett or Raymond Chandler, but the majority is going to win this one. It's B. Samuel Dashiell Hammett. The D is for Dashiell. If he told you that, it was going to give it away. Can't give you all the answers. You have to study a little bit, kids. It's good for your brains. Grows your brains. Number 8. Several shows included Hollywood in their title. Only one featured interviews by gossip columnist Luella Parsons. Which one? Again, we had no idea. But I love the attempts. We tried to really evenly have no clue. So good job for us. We were all over the place. The correct answer is C. The minority wins this time. C. Hollywood Hotel, which also, I believe, was the name of a film, an old film as well. Don't quote me on that, but I think. Number 9. This comedian made his first radio appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show. Who was he? At first, I thought you were trying to trick me. I was like, Ed Sullivan was on TV. But I know I'm wrong. Being one of the youngest here, I'm allowed an error. So, who was it? Not Fred Allen. Not many of us thought Edgar Bergen. A lot of us thought Red Skelton. Thought but maybe Jack Benny. And you guys are right. C. It's Jack Benny. Jack Benny started on radio on The Ed Sullivan Show. Last one. Hollywood marriages didn't always last that long. Still don't even last that long. Probably last even less long. But following these radio couples, which one lasted the longest? Nobody thought it was Fred Allen and Portland Hoffa. Whoa, I think there's some shade or some drama there. Gonna have to look up. But we were kind of split between George Burns and Gracie Allen, Phil Harris and Alice Faye. Jack Benny and Mary Livingston got a fewer votes. But the winner for the longest marriage goes to B. Phil Harris and Alice Faye. They were married for 54 years. Thank you to Frank for actually putting in the number of years into the answers. I bet you want to know how long the other ones were married, don't you? Well, you're gonna find out. George Burns and Gracie Allen were married for 38 years. Jack Benny, Mary Livingston were married for 47 years. And Fred Allen and Portland Hoffa were married for 29 years. So, very significant for all of them. All right, well, there you go. Well, a not so scary quiz from Frank. Minimal word trippage or tongue twistering. Well done. The questions were not too scary. And I actually got a few right. Well
Thank
done.
you. Thank you very much, Sally and Frank. That was really fun. I particularly appreciated Samuel D. Hammett. So nice way to veil your answer, to veil the correct answer, Frank. So now we have come to the end of the regular public portion of our evening. So I will stop our recording and then we can let our hair down. So let's see.